On February 6, 2026, Mercury, the planet of thought, communication, perception, and meaning, leaves the clarity of Aquarius and enters the boundless waters of Pisces. And when Mercury enters Pisces, interesting things usually happen, because when in Pisces, Mercury is in its both detriment and fall. This is because Pisces is the opposite sign of Virgo, and Mercury rules Virgo. So rather than direct, logical thought, Mercury in Pisces will operate through imagination, dreams, and intuitions. But despite the detriment, this placement is excellent for poetry, music, acting, and all the other creative endeavors. The only potential downside is that it could lead to confusion, misinformation, and any difficulties with step-by-step linear thinking. You may notice that logic softens, time blurs, and facts melts into feelings. So today we're going to talk about what really happens during Mercury in Pisces, the beauty, the confusion, the magic, and the collective themes. So Mercury rules the mind. It's how we think, speak, interpret reality, while Pisces rules the ocean. It's your emotions, dreams, imaginations, intuition, and spirituality. So the bottom line is that it's not a bad transit, but Pisces doesn't care about precision, while Mercury is the total opposite, and Pisces cares about meanings over facts, symbols over explanations, and feelings over definition. So during this transit, your conversations can become emotionally loaded. People could speak more in metaphors without even realizing it, and misunderstandings can increase. So you might say something perfectly clearly and still being misunderstood. You could remember dreams more vividly than conversations. You might also think less in sentences and more in images. It's usually a time when intuition replaces logic. But this is an excellent time for artists, mystics, healers, and creatives. But there are also fascinating themes when Mercury enters Pisces, is that it shifts the emotional atmosphere. So you may notice more nostalgia online, and the content that goes viral usually are poetic, sad, or liminal. You may sense a rise in themes of longing, loss, or forgiveness. So during Mercury in Pisces, people don't just consume information, they actually absorb it like a sponge. This is why misinformation can spread more easily during this transit, not because people are unintelligent, but because emotion often becomes the filter instead of logic. So if something feels true, it's more likely to be believed. And also in the past Mercury and Pisces transits, we've seen artists releasing deeply confessional or spiritual work, public figures speaking more emotionally, and then walking back their statements, and important conversations happening behind the scenes rather than publicly. And an important thing is that some of the best insights you may receive will be during Mercury in Pisces. Those insights will arrive when you're not actively thinking. So I hope that this short introduction gave you a brief idea of what Mercury in Pisces would probably feel like. Now, let's head straight to all the 12 signs from Aries to Pisces and explore the individual themes for each signs. Let's get started with Aries. February 2026 marks a subtle but important mental and energetic shift as Mercury enters Pisces, activating your 12th house. For Aries, this transit is more about mental closure, inner processing, and preparation for a new cycle that's about to begin very soon. Pisces rules over your 12th house, which is the most private and hidden area of the chart. This is the house of the subconscious, rest, retreat, solitude, dreams, intuition, and spiritual awareness. This also includes old patterns, karmic themes, and endings. Here, things usually happen quietly or invisibly. When Mercury enters this space, your mind turns inward. You may notice less interest in talking things out, more thinking in images, feelings, and impressions, or a stronger inner dialogue. You could also notice thoughts resurfacing from the past, or a desire to disconnect from noise and overstimulation. This is not the best transit for forcing clarity, but it is excellent for inner understanding. Mercury in Pisces does not think in straight lines. For Aries, this can feel confusing at first because you're used to directness, speed, and decisiveness. During this transit, your thoughts may feel foggy or non-linear. You may also struggle to explain what you feel, even if you feel it deeply. Your words might not fully capture your experiences. You may have sudden insights that don't come from logic, rather from feeling or remembering. Try to pay attention to your dreams, any repeating thoughts, some memories resurfacing, or any emotional reactions that seem disproportionate. These are messages from your subconscious asking to be processed, not ignored. Because Mercury rules communication, this transit affects how you speak and how you listen. You may speak less but more meaningfully. You may prefer written communication over verbal. You might feel misunderstood if you over-explain. And silence becomes more comfortable than small talk. This is not really the best time to confront people aggressively, demand immediate answers, or expect logical responses from others. Instead, communication works best when it's gentle, compassionate, and open-ended. If you push for certainty now, frustration may increase. If you allow space, clarity will eventually emerge. The more you consciously reflect, the less this transit feels heavy. If you are a Taurus, February 2026 brings an important mental and social shift as Mercury enters Pisces, activating your 11th house. This is a transit that changes how you think about your future, your goals, and the people you surround yourself with. Mercury governs the mind, communication, ideas, learning, and decision-making. When it moves into Pisces, the thinking style becomes less logical and more intuitive. And for Taurus, this plays out most strongly through friendships, networks, and long-term visions. Pisces rules your 11th house, which governs friendships and social circles, communities and networks, long-term goals, and your relationship with the future. This could also include support systems and collective environments. When Mercury enters this house, your thinking turns towards the future, but in a Pisces way, which means that it's idealistic, emotional, and intuitive rather than practical. You may start questioning which goals are actually meaningful, which of your friendships feel aligned, and which feel draining. This transit softens rigid expectations and invites you to dream differently. Mercury in Pisces does not operate on strict timelines or logic. For Taurus, this can feel quite unfamiliar because you tend to prefer predictability, stability, and clear plans. During this transit, you might feel inspired but unsure of how to structure your ideas. You could think in images, feelings, or sudden insights as well. Your mind tends to become more receptive, but also more impressionable. This is an excellent time to brainstorm without judgment, to let ideas flow without forcing structure, and to pay attention to emotional reactions around future plans. One of the strongest effects of this transit shows up through people. Mercury in your 11th house highlights your conversations with friends, any group dynamics, or online communities and collaborations. You may notice deeper, more emotional conversations with your friends, and a desire to connect with people who feel compassionate or creative. If something feels confusing socially, it's a signal to observe rather than to immediately react. Although this transit is not the best for hard negotiations, clear deadlines, and forcing decisions in group settings, it is excellent for heart-to-heart conversations, creative brainstorming, and collaborative visions. If you are Gemini rising, February 6, 2026 brings a noticeable shift in how you think about your direction, reputation, and long-term path as Mercury enters Pisces, activating your 10th house. Mercury is especially important for you because it rules your rising sign. So whenever Mercury changes sign, you will feel it more personally, mentally, emotionally, and energetically. This transit does not just change what you think about, it changes how you approach your public life, career decisions, and sense of purpose. Pisces rules your 10th house, which governs career and vocation, public image and reputation, long-term goals, authority figures and mentors, and how you're seen by the world. When Mercury enters Pisces, your thinking around career and direction becomes more intuitive, less linear, and more emotionally driven. Instead of asking, "What's the smartest move?" you may start asking, "Does this path feel right? Does this align with who I'm becoming? Or am I doing this out of meaning or obligation?" This is a transit that softens rigid definitions of success. Gemini natives are usually very mentally sharp, analytical, and fast-thinking. But Mercury in Pisces works differently. During this transit, decisions may feel harder to define. Logic may take a backseat to intuition, and you may sense that something is off before you can explain why. This doesn't mean you're losing clarity. It means your inner compass is recalibrating. At this time, you might question a career path that you once felt confident about. You might feel drawn toward more meaningful or creative work, or struggle to explain your vision to others. But that's okay. This transit isn't asking for immediate answers. It's asking for honest reflection. Mercury moving through your 10th house highlights your career conversations, public communication, and decisions about direction, visibility, and leadership. It is wise to be mindful of miscommunication in professional settings, assumptions being made without clarity, and overpromising without structure. Speak carefully but also compassionately. Your words carry emotional weight right now, even when you don't intend them to. This transit is excellent for vision-based thinking. You may feel inspired to reimagine your career long-term, explore creative or spiritual callings, and align work with meaning rather than status. In professional environments, try to be extra clear with agreements. Ask any clarifying questions. And finally, don't assume others understand your intentions. This transit favors gentle leadership, emotional intelligence, and listening more than speaking. Authority does not come from force right now. It comes from awareness. If you are a Cancer, February 6, 2026 brings a meaningful mental and spiritual shift as Mercury enters Pisces, activating your 9th house. This is a powerful transit for how you think about life, meaning, beliefs, and the bigger picture. Mercury governs the mind, communication, learning, and perception. And when it moves into Pisces, your thinking becomes more intuitive, symbolic, and emotionally guided. For Cancers, this transit doesn't change what you think. It changes how you understand the world and your place in it. Pisces rules your 9th house, which governs beliefs, philosophies, higher learning, spirituality, travel and exploration, and life direction. So when Mercury enters this house, your mind naturally looks beyond the everyday. You may feel drawn to bigger questions about purpose, spiritual or philosophical topics, learning for meaning, not just practicality, and new perspectives that soften rigid beliefs. This transit encourages you to feel your truth, not just intellectually understand it. Cancers are emotionally intuitive already, but Mercury in Pisces deepens this even further. During this transit, your thinking becomes more reflective and open-ended. You may question beliefs that you've held for a long time. Certainty gives way to curiosity. So instead of asking, "Is this right or wrong?" you may ask, "Does this feel meaningful?" Or, "Does this align with my emotional truth?" This is a time when answers come through insight, not logic. One of the strongest effects of this transit is on your belief system. This transit is excellent for studying astrology, psychology, spirituality, or art. It is also great for reflecting on personal beliefs and finally letting go of belief systems that are rooted in fear. If you're studying or teaching, trust intuitive understanding. Allow concepts to unfold naturally, and avoid forcing conclusions. True understanding comes gradually during this transit. If you are a Leo, February 6, 2026 brings a deep and transformative mental shift as Mercury enters Pisces, activating your 8th house. This is not a light or surface level transit. Mercury governs the mind, communication, information, and decision-making. And when it moves through your 8th house, thinking turns introspective, psychological, and emotionally intense. For Leos, this transit asks you to look beneath the surface, especially around trust, intimacy, shared resources, and emotional attachments. Pisces rules your 8th house, which governs emotional bonds and intimacy, shared finances, debts and investments, power dynamics and vulnerability, psychological patterns, and endings, rebirth, and deep transformation. When Mercury enters this house, your thoughts naturally gravitate toward what you share with others, emotionally or materially, unspoken dynamics in relationships, and any inner fears, desires, and attachments. This transit doesn't offer quick clarity. It offers deep awareness. During this transit, you may think more about emotional undercurrents. You might revisit past emotional experiences, and you may even feel drawn to understand why you react the way you do. Your intuition becomes stronger than logic. You might sense that things aren't being said. You may feel emotionally affected by any conversations. Or you could also need more privacy to process thoughts. The 8th house also rules shared money. Mercury here brings attention to financial agreements, loans, debts, taxes or investments, and financial dependence or interdependence. For Leos, financial conversations may feel emotionally charged. Clarity may require patience and careful review. And try to avoid assumptions and always ask for details. This is a good time to review and try not to rush. If you are a Virgo, February 6, 2026 brings a noticeable shift in how you think about relationships, communication, and other people as Mercury enters Pisces, activating your 7th house. This is an especially important transit for you because Mercury is your chart ruler. So, when Mercury changes signs, you feel it directly, mentally, emotionally, and relationally. Mercury in Pisces is very different from Mercury in Virgo. Logic softens, certainty dissolves, and intuition becomes louder. For Virgos, this can feel uncomfortable, but also very deeply revealing. Pisces rules your 7th house, which governs one-to-one relationships, romantic partnerships, business contracts, open enemies and mirrors, and how others reflect you back to yourself. When Mercury enters this house, your attention shifts away from self-analysis and toward understanding others. Relationships become a classroom. This transit asks you to feel into connection, not over-explain it. Virgos are naturally analytical, precise, and mentally structured. Mercury in Pisces works in the opposite way. During this transit, conversations may feel emotionally charged. Logic may not resolve misunderstandings, and words may feel insufficient to express what's going on. You may notice a desire for emotional understanding rather than factual clarity. You might also feel misunderstood, or you could also misunderstand others. This transit teaches you that not everything can be solved by thinking harder. The 7th house shows us ourselves through others. With Mercury right here, partners may reflect emotional blind spots. Conversations may bring up unresolved issues. You may realize patterns in how you communicate. So, this is not the best transit for finalizing contracts without a review, making promises based on emotions, or avoiding important conversations. Instead, it is advisable that you ask clarifying questions. Put things in writing when needed, and allow emotional nuances but verify details. If you are a Libra, February 6, 2026 brings a noticeable shift in how you think about your daily life, routines, work habits, and mental well-being as Mercury enters Pisces, activating your 6th house. Mercury governs the mind, communication, decision-making, learning, and problem-solving. So when it moves into Pisces, logic usually softens and intuition takes over. For Libras, this transit asks you to slow down mentally, reassess how you're using your energy on a day-to-day basis, and pay closer attention to how your thoughts affect your body and productivity. Pisces rules your 6th house, which governs daily routines and schedules, work environment and responsibilities, habits and productivity, mental and physical well-being, and finally, service and effort. When Mercury enters this house, your focus shifts to how you function on a daily basis, but through a Pisces lens, meaning things become less structured, more emotionally driven, and more sensitive to atmosphere and energy. You may start questioning if this routine is supporting you or draining you. Are you mentally overworking yourself? This transit gently exposes where your systems need adjustment. Libras often think in terms of balance, fairness, and external harmony. Mercury in Pisces shifts that focus inward. During this transit, your concentration may come in waves. You may feel mentally tired more easily, and your thoughts may wander if routines feel uninspiring. This is not mental laziness. It's a sign that your mind needs more flow and less pressure. Your mind is asking you for quality over quantity. It is important to note that Pisces energy can blur boundaries, so you should be mindful of taking on more than you should, saying yes just to avoid conflict, and working without a clear structure. Right now, it's a good time to ask more clarifying questions, simplify tasks, and adjust workloads to protect your mental energy. Efficiency improves when you honor your limits. If you are a Scorpio, February 6, 2026 brings a noticeable shift in how you think, express yourself, and experience joy as Mercury enters Pisces, activating your 5th house. Mercury governs the mind, communication, learning, and expression. So when it enters Pisces, thinking becomes intuitive, emotional, and imaginative rather than logical and controlled. So for Scorpios, this transit opens a softer, more vulnerable mental space, one that asks you to feel before you analyze and to reconnect with your creativity, pleasure, and emotional authenticity. Pisces rules your 5th house, which governs creativity and self-expression, romance and dating, pleasure, fun, and enjoyment, children and inner child themes, and finally, confidence through authentic expression. When Mercury moves into this house, your thoughts turn toward what brings you joy, how you express emotions creatively, and whether you feel inspired or emotionally fulfilled. This is a transit that softens your intensity and invites play, imagination, and emotional openness. Scorpios are usually mentally deep, focused, and controlled. Mercury in Pisces loosens that grip. During this transit, your thoughts may feel more fluid and emotional. You may think in images, music, or feelings, and inspiration may come suddenly without explanation. You might notice increased daydreaming, emotional memories resurfacing, or a desire to express feelings rather than suppress them. This is not mental distraction, it's emotional intelligence awakening. One of the strongest effects of this transit is on creative expression. Mercury in your 5th house supports writing, music, art, or storytelling, creative content creation, and expressing emotions through non-verbal means. So for Scorpios, creativity becomes a form of emotional release. You may feel inspired, and your ideas come best when you don't force them. This is definitely a beautiful time to create without worrying about perfection or outcomes. The 5th house also rules romance. During this transit, conversations in romantic connections become more emotional. You may feel more sensitive to tone and energy, and attraction may be based more on emotional resonance rather than logic. So for Scorpios, try to express feelings honestly, not indirectly. Don't try to expect others to sense what you feel, and balance intuition with clarity. If you are a Sagittarius, February 6, 2026 brings a noticeable shift in how you think, communicate, and process emotions as Mercury enters Pisces, activating your 4th house. Mercury rules the mind, communication, memory, and perception. So when it moves into Pisces, thinking becomes intuitive, emotional, and reflective rather than direct and future-oriented. So for Sagittarius, this transit turns your attention inward, toward home, emotional security, and the inner foundations that support everything else in your life. Pisces rules your 4th house, which governs home and living environment, family and emotional roots, private life and inner world, psychological foundations, and emotional safety and belonging. When Mercury enters this house, your thoughts naturally drift toward home and family matters, emotional memories, your sense of stability and safety, and what makes you feel grounded. Sagittariuses are typically forward-looking, optimistic, and mentally expansive. Mercury in Pisces slows that momentum. Your thoughts may turn reflective or nostalgic. Memories from the past may resurface unexpectedly, and You may feel more emotionally sensitive than usual. This is a time when emotions guide thinking, not logic or long-term vision. Mercury in the 4th house highlights conversations with family members, decisions about living arrangements, and emotional dynamics within the home. So for Sagittariuses, family discussions may feel emotionally charged. Misunderstandings may arise if things are left unsaid, and old family patterns may resurface. Be mindful of your assumptions. Communicate clearly with your family members, and try not to avoid important conversations. This transit is ideal for emotional understanding, not necessarily confrontation. For Sagittariuses who often seek freedom and movement, this transit reminds you that inner security matters just as much as outer adventure. You may realize that emotional stability is something you need to consciously build. Reflecting now helps clear emotional residue that would otherwise affect future decisions. If you are a Capricorn, February 6, 2026 brings a noticeable shift in how you think, communicate, and process everyday information as Mercury enters Pisces, activating your 3rd house. Mercury governs the mind, communication, learning, and perception. So when it moves into Pisces, thinking becomes intuitive, emotional, and symbolic rather than practical and structured. So for Capricorns, this transit softens your usually serious, goal-oriented mental style and asks you to listen differently, speak more gently, and think beyond logic. Pisces rules your 3rd house, which governs communication and speech, thought patterns and mindset, learning and studying, siblings and close relatives, and short trips and daily interactions. When Mercury enters this house, your focus shifts to how you think and communicate on a day-to-day basis, but through a Pisces lens. That means less rigid thinking, more emotional and intuitive perception, and increased sensitivity to tone, energy, and atmosphere. This transit invites you to soften mental control and trust intuitive understanding. Capricorns tend to think strategically, realistically, and with long-term outcomes in mind. Mercury in Pisces tends to loosen that structure. During this transit, thoughts may feel less linear. You may daydream more than usual, and inspiration may come without explanation. You might notice some difficulty focusing on rigid details, thinking in images or feelings rather than facts, and sudden emotional insights. This doesn't mean your mind is weaker. It means it's operating on a different mode. The communication style change that you experience is one of the most important parts of this transit. Mercury in Pisces changes how you speak and listen. So for Capricorns, your communication becomes softer and less guarded. You may avoid blunt or confrontational speech. And you may feel misunderstood if you assume others think like you. Ask open-ended questions and allow conversations to unfold naturally. This transit supports gentle, healing conversations, and not necessarily debates. If you are an Aquarius, February 6, 2026 brings an important shift in how you think about money, values, self-worth, and security as Mercury enters Pisces, activating your 2nd house. Mercury governs the mind, communication, decision-making, and perception. So when it enters Pisces, thinking becomes intuitive, emotional, and less concrete. For Aquarius, this transit doesn't just affect finances. It reshapes how you mentally relate to stability, confidence, and what you truly value. Pisces rules your 2nd house, which governs income and financial resources, personal values and priorities, self-worth and confidence, possessions and material security, and the relationship between money and emotion. When Mercury enters this house, your thoughts turn towards financial decisions. What feels secure versus what just looks secure. Whether your income aligns with your values. And emotional attachments to money or possessions. Aquariuses often approach money intellectually or strategically, often detached from emotions. Mercury in Pisces changes that. During this transit, you may feel more emotionally sensitive about finances. Money decisions may feel confusing or uncertain, and your confidence may fluctuate based on emotional states. Mercury in the second house brings attention to income streams, spending habits, and financial conversations. So for Aquarius, financial discussions may feel vague or emotionally charged. It's important to avoid vague financial agreements, always double-check numbers, and be clear about expectations. This is a great time to review finances and not rush decisions. You may feel nostalgic about certain belongings, emotionally attached to stability, and you might feel unsettled if things feel financially uncertain. So a word for Aquarius is, don't avoid financial clarity just to keep peace. Try to speak openly but calmly about resources. And put agreements in writing if you feel that it is needed. Compassion doesn't mean confusion. Clarity supports trust. If things ever feel unclear, you can try to slow down decisions. If you are a Pisces, February 6, 2026 marks a very personal turning point as Mercury enters Pisces, moving directly into your first house. This is not a subtle transit for you. Mercury governs the mind, perception, communication, and how we interpret reality. And when it enters your rising sign, your voice, thoughts, and self-expression takes the center stage. This is a period where your inner world becomes visible, whether you intend it to be or not. Pisces rules your first house, which governs identity and self-image, personality and presence, how others perceive you, your approach to life, and your physical and mental demeanor. So, when Mercury enters your first house, your thoughts become more prominent, your communication style may change, and you become more aware of how you express yourself. This transit begins a new mental cycle for Pisces. What you think, say, and feel right now will shape how others experience you for weeks to come. Pisces already live in a highly intuitive, emotional, and imaginative internal world. Mercury entering Pisces amplifies this awareness. During this transit, your thoughts may feel louder or more constant. You may feel more self-aware than usual, and you may question how accurately others see you. Your mind is aligning with your evolving sense of self. Mercury in your rising sign deeply affects how you communicate. So for Pisces, your speech could become softer, more emotional, and more symbolic. You may communicate through tone, pauses, or intuition rather than direct words. This transit favors storytelling, creative expression, emotional honesty, and non-linear communication, so it could be wise to look into those activities. However, it's important to notice that Pisces energy can blur clarity, so be mindful of any vague language. Don't try to assume others feel what you mean, and ground important conversations in clear wording. Your voice carries emotional weight now, Observe how things feel over time. Let insights unfold naturally. And trust intuition, but pause before acting. Your direction is forming internally before it becomes external. Before you go, just a little reminder. This reading is meant to be a general, monthly energetic overview, rather than a precise prediction of your life. So please take what resonates and leave what doesn't. And always trust your own intuition and lived experience above anything else. If parts of this reading felt accurate, grounding, or comforting, that's usually a sign that it touched on themes already present in your awareness. And if some parts didn't land, that's completely okay too. Not every message is meant for every moment. And discernment is part of the practice. You're always the one in control of how you respond, what you choose, and where you place your energy. I hope this video gave you something useful. And if this helped you at all, feel free to like the video or subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.